Hey everyone, welcome back to Impossible Color. Today I'm going to show you how to take easy levitation photos. So basically what this is, you can see I just did a quick search in Google. It's your subject looks like they're floating or they're flying in the air. Some of these are done extremely well with a lot of props and everything, and some of them look kind of cheap. So in order to get that really good look, we're going to be using a tripod. If you want, you could have your subject just jump in the air or jump off an object, but you really don't have a lot of control and you're going to end up with a lot of blurry pictures and outtakes that are just not going to do the trick. So the first step is finding a nice location and setting up your tripod. I recommend going for a background that is relatively clear. If it's too clear, then it's going to look fake. It's going to look like maybe you kind of just cropped out a photo and pasted it on top of another one, or you did a green screen or something like that. But if your background image is way too busy, then the focus is not going to be on the levitation. If someone picks it up at all, the distractions in the background may just play some tricks on the eyes and you don't see it at all. So the next step is to take your first shot, and the secret behind the levitation photos is having a support. Now you want to pick a support that is as small as possible. If you have some really narrow legs, that can help. Some people use a ladder. If you have something that's see-through, it's even better because you don't have to work with the shadows afterwards quite as much. All kinds of ways you can do this, but the main thing you need to look out for when you take your model shot is that there doesn't seem to be any strong weight or tension in the body. You also don't want to have anything that looks too flat or that it's been squished down by pressure. For example, if this foot was completely flat with the surface, it's going to look obvious. You want a sense of freedom and weightlessness to it. If you have your subject sitting down, it's going to compress the butt and it's going to look kind of fake too. There's a lot of different tricks that you can do just to give this sort of weightless feel. Like, for example, getting the flow. Let's just make a separate layer here. So just getting a flow in their dress and having some rhythm to your subject so they don't look stiff and square if they're just kind of standing up in the ground and their legs are perfectly still and their arms are to their side and they're floating. It doesn't really sell the image very well. And you can also use a lot of props. What some people do is they'll use fishing line, and you can have various objects floating. If you can hang them off of branches and stuff, and then the fishing line or thread, a very thin thread, if the camera picks it up at all. If not, you can just easily clone that out. You can also use fishing line to hold up parts of the dress. I had the model hold her dress here, but her hand could have been free up here, and just put a little bit of fishing line through there and we could have had that dress flowing up too. So the next photo that you want to take is with the exact same setup, but an empty shot without the model. Now it's really important that you don't move your tripod at all. This will make it a lot easier when you're editing afterwards. And if you can, try to lock up the focus on your camera so it's not shifting around. You can see I shifted slightly because I forgot to lock it up. And you can see that there's a slight shift in focus. Doesn't really matter for this particular image, but it could make a big difference if you have a certain pattern in your background. If you don't know how to focus lock your camera, you could also just turn your focus onto manual after you set it for the subject. Just make sure that the subject goes in the exact same location, have some kind of a marker there, and make sure that they're on the prop exact same way so your focus isn't out. The next step that you want to do is remove the stool or any supports that you have to reveal the background image on the layer below. If you have any shadows from a particular object that you're using, you want to make sure that those are corrected as well. And it's best not to use the eraser tool, but to create a layer mask and paint in black where you want to erase it. And if you make any mistakes, just paint it back in with white. Okay, once you get everything out for your supports, and you may have multiple supports for different parts of the body. I just did a really simple example here. Then you want to add the shadows in. Without the shadow, it really just doesn't look real at all. It doesn't look like it's floating, so that's really important. So with the shadow, try to play around with the shadows that are already existing with your support. If you have a translucent support or something with holes in it, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have a better shadow cast underneath. But if not, you can paint one in and set it to multiply and make sure that you have a certain amount of blur or a gradiated blur that looks natural and matches in with the background. So you can set that to a multiply so it picks up the natural colors of the grass. And don't forget that shadows do have some color to them. They should take on the ambient color of the scene, so they have a slight bluish purple tint to them most of the time. And also on your shadow, try to make sure that you erase some blades of grass or any of the other materials that may be blocking the shadow, so it gives a more natural look. If the shadow is just pasted on top and it's perfectly round, it's not going to sell it at all. So once you're done all of your shadows and you remove the objects that you want, then you can start your serious edits. Now just a little note, if you're doing any of your editing beforehand in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, make sure that you copy the settings from the first one that you edit, most likely the one with the model in it, and copy those settings and paste them exactly onto your blank background image. This is really important so that they have a nice seamless blend. Okay, once you have your final image and you want to do kind of your refined edits, this is the time to do them. So the example that I did here is I wanted to darken the background so that the emphasis would be more on the model. And then I went for a color variation where I cooled everything down a little bit. If you want to, you can add different levels of blur. This is the time to start compositing any extra details that you want. For example, maybe you took several photos of the dress, some of them being held up in different areas. Maybe you had some pieces of hair that were held up, and you can just copy and paste and composite those in. This is the time to do it. And almost always the last stage of any of your editing is to do your sharpen. And that's pretty much it. That's how to do a basic levitation photo. Lots of room for creativity here, and it's nice to use props and other effects that are going to sell the dreamy or the floaty look that you're going for. And here's one final example that I did in the same set using all of the same techniques. Thanks a lot for watching Impossible Color. I really like to see you guys get out there and take your own levitation photos. And if you can post a link to them down in the comments, I think that'd be really cool. If you have any ideas for new tutorials that you'd like to see in upcoming weeks, please let me know. Subscribe to Impossible Color and thumbs up the video if you had some fun. See you next week.